Part 251. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2505. At the end of September, Thursday Lang and Xiang Mingxiu returned with the caravan. He took off the dogskin cap on his head and said to them, "It's snowing in the north, and the weather here in Beijing is better. It is enough to wear a jacket in the capital at this time." This year, he went late, so he brought back fewer items than in previous years, but he also has his own regular customers, so the speed of sales, exchanges and purchases is fairly fast. If he hadn't rushed back to attend Man Bao's wedding, he would have stayed for a while longer. He looked left and right and asked, "Why didn't the eldest sister come to Beijing?" "She was very excited to come to Beijing when I went to Beijing." Man Bao said, "She is pregnant." "Yo," Shuyo Lang raised his voice and said in surprise, "This is good, only one child is still a little thin, and another one will have company later." Man Bao said, "Father and mother are thinking of going home this year to see, then you will take them back." Thursday Lang said that there was no problem, and asked, "Are the elder brother and elder sister-in-law going back?" "If they don't come back, the second brother and the second sister-in-law will also stay for Liwei to get married." Zhou Liwei's engagement with the eldest daughter of Mr. Ian's family in Zhou Li's school was one of the most proud things that Zhou Liwei was most proud of when he came to the capital last time. When Man Bao came back, the marriage had already been decided, and the matter was still heard from Zhou Lixiu and Zhou Ligu. She had seen the little girl twice, and she was about the same age as her, only less than a year old. She looked very shy a girl. But she wasn't shy at all. "I heard that Mr. Lan was interested in Zhou Lixiu at first. After all, Zhou Lixiu was studying in the school, right?" But the girl looked at Zhou Liwei, and Zhou Lixiu was only focused on making money by copying books and studying for imperial examinations. He didn't really want to get married, not now. So Mr. Lan could only hold back, and the Zhou family also came to propose marriage for Zhou Liwei, so he reluctantly agreed. When Zhou Lixiu and the others first entered the school, they were often isolated and bullied because they were outsiders and spoke with a Shu accent. However, the three of them went to school together, so they can become a small group by themselves. But after a long time, I couldn't hold back a few times. Several boys fought in the school. That year, it happened that Zhou Lizhong went to the north with Zhou Lizhong, and Zhou Liwei who stayed behind was in charge of them. Friday Lang and Saturday Lang went there twice, and have been frequent since then. Give them something to eat at noon, or occasionally call them when they pass by. Those students bully the soft and fear the hard. Knowing that their family runs a restaurant on the other side of the same street, they don't dare to provoke them. And when Zhou Liwei occasionally gave them food, he would also give it to the gentlemen in the academy. Occasionally, he would meet Mrs. Lan, who also went to deliver meals to Mr. Lan. After going back and forth, the two became familiar with each other. Later, when Xiao Qian went to Beijing, the steamed pork she made was delicious, and the restaurant would take out the steamed pork with noodles. Mr. Lan also likes to eat, so Mrs. Lan will buy it from time to time, and the two will become more familiar with each other. When Mr. Lan showed that Zhou Lixiu's knowledge and character were okay, and when he could be recruited as a son-in-law, Mrs. Lan quietly told her mother that Zhou Lixiu was good, but she was interested in Zhou Lixiu's brother. Zhou Liwei is not too young, and Tuesday Lang thought about taking advantage of this time in the capital to do it together, but it's not counted yet. In fact, the number of exchanges between the capital and Qilai village has increased, and they feel that the two places seem to be not very far apart. Mainly because they have their own car. Horse-drawn carts, no, but they have mule carts, donkey carts, ox carts, and especially mule carts, which they think are no worse than horse-drawn carts. It is very convenient to have a car. If you go out more often, you will feel that you are staying in an inn, and there is nothing to hurry on. Once or twice without experience, I can't make it to the dormitory, so I have to sleep outside, but after the third time, unless I encounter an accident, I can live in a place I am familiar with, so I don't feel uncomfortable. Thursday Lang is very accustomed to going out now. After he finished eating, he put down the bowl and wiped his mouth. By the way, Lord Yang knows that you are going to get married, so let me bring you 2 boxes of gifts, 1 box is for you, a box is for Bai Shan. Man Bao was happy. Where is it? Thursday Lang led her to see. The box was opened, and inside her there were exquisite fabrics, a set of colored glass tea sets, and a set of jade jewelry. Man Bao was stunned. It's so precious. Thursday Lang said, I said it was for you to add a box. Man Bao looked at Bai Shan's box and wanted to open it, but Bai Shan was not there, so she held back. Wait until he comes back from overtime to look at it. Man Bao asked Zibing and Julan to take the things back to her room and put them away. Time passed quickly, and Man Bao and Bai Shan took marriage leave together at the 5th o'clock. Yes, officials in Dajin have marriage leave, up to 9 days. Both Man Bao and Bai Shan took 9 days of vacation, including the 2 10-day holidays in between, and they had a total of 11 days of vacation. Bai Shan's family moved from Zhou's house to Changqing Lane, and on the 6th day of the 6th day, they went to give dowry gifts. Bai Shan invited Bai Dalan, Bai Erlang, Yin, or Lu Huan and others to be his relatives and friends in the escort team. Lu Huan, who was already on duty, happily took a leave of absence and ran to join in the fun. He followed the gongs and drums to carry the dowry around the inner city and then deliver it to Zhou's house. Many people in Kongai Yuanfang stood at the door to watch the fun. Of course, the servants watched the fun, and the masters waited behind to listen to the report. There were only 1 or 2 naughty ones, so they couldn't help leaning on the wall of their house and looking out, watching the betrothal gifts being sent to Zhou's house one after another, and couldn't help but stunned. I saw at least the 4-pitch house just now. The Bai family is so rich. If there is a house in the dowry, then put a model of a small house on the burden, and press the deed under it. When it arrives at the woman's house, it will belong to the woman. The woman's parents can choose to keep it or send it back as the bride's dowry. The olds who too happily walked around the dowry, and then led someone to replace the happy word on it with the seal of their Zhou family, and then left some things for the meaning, and the rest was recorded on the dowry list intact. As Man Bao's dowry. Olds who too walked around and left 2 pieces of silver, 1 for him, 1 for Qian, and 2 pieces of cloth, all 1 for each person, even if he left something. Old Zhou Tiou sighed while sitting among the piles of dowry. Zhou Dalan and the others brought a model of a small house and set it up, and when they saw it, they asked, Father, the deed of this house has to be pressed, or else I'll forget it later. The olds Hutu said, What's the hurry, there is still 1 more day, and I will press it again tomorrow. What should I do now if it is stolen? Zhou Dalan, who would come here to steal something? Stealing is still the deed, it is better to steal money and fabrics. No, no one will steal anything at all, okay. See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2506. There were 3 pieces of paper on the desk in front of Mr. Zhuang, and the 3 of them quietly poked their heads from the door to see. Mr. Zhuang, who was in a daze, noticed that, without moving his eyelids, he said, Come in. The 3 hurried in, and Man Bao asked with a smile, Sir, what are you looking for from us? Mr. Zhuang waved to them and smiled, Come here. The 3 of them stepped forward and stood in front of the desk in an honest row. Mr. Zhuang looked at them carefully and said with a smile, You are all grown up, Erlang will be crowned in February next year, and Bai Shan will be crowned in Dongyu. Originally, your characters were to be given to you after the crown, but I think you are all getting married, starting a family and starting a business, and now you are considered successful in your career, so I decided to choose characters for you now. The eyes of the 3 lit up, and Man Bao asked directly, "Sir, do I have it too?" Mr. Zhuang smiled and said, "Naturally." Man Bao became happy and waited excitedly. Mr. Zhuang and Bai Erlang said, "I have discussed with your father, your brother should take the word right view, and your name is sincere, you should choose the word sincere." He said slowly, "Be faithful and righteous, and repay your merits with respect." Bai Erlang nodded fiercely, "I know, sir, I will definitely believe in reason in the future." Mr. Zhuang nodded approvingly, "Good boy." Mr. Zhuang looked at Bai Shan, "I used to think that your kindness was good fortune, but only later did I realize that your word for kindness came from the first sentence of the university. If so, you should follow your father's original intention and choose the word excellent. The way of university lies in three things: being virtuous, being close to the people, and aiming for the best. Self-cultivation is a lifetime thing, and you are a very smart child. May you be worthy of your heart and the world in the future." Bai Shan responded seriously. Then Mr. Zhuang looked at Man Bao and said with a smile, "If you want to say your name, the name your father gave you is not a good one." Man Bao, "She thinks it's pretty good, Man Duo is so nice, and she's very satisfied as soon as she hears it." Man Bao habitually took a sentence in his heart, and then he thought about it seriously. According to the rules of scholars, this name is indeed not good. Mr. Zhuang said, "If it is full, it will be leaked, so few people use the full name to name it." Bai Shan couldn't help defending his future father-in-law in a low voice, "Sir, the full treasures are full of grains." Well, following the names of Thursday Lang, Wu Lang, and Saturday Lang, it is no longer a bad connotation. Mr. Zhuang couldn't help laughing and said, "That's why I gave you the word Qian, just to make up for your full word, and also to warn you that if you are full of losses, you will benefit from modesty. It's the way of heaven, don't forget it in the future." Man Bao asked, "Is it just one word? Wouldn't people call me Zhou Qian in the future? It doesn't seem very pleasant, sir, please add another word for me." Mr. Zhuang couldn't help laughing when he heard it, and after thinking for a moment, he said, "You are a good boy, sir, I hope you will not be complacent, but what you have done is admirable, although it has only been a few years, but your achievements in the past few years have far surpassed the vast majority of people in this world, including Mr. He said, "Such achievements should be respected, so let's add a subword before the word Qian, Zikian, Zikian, ha 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 ha, good word, that's it." After he finished speaking, he wrote a subcharacter on the first piece of paper from his left hand, which was linked with the latter character of Qian. Although it sounds more like a boy's word, Man Bao is still very happy, because this word has a good meaning. Mr. Zhuang handed the three pieces of paper to them and said with a smile, "You can tell your relatives and friends, and you can match the words in the future. When you and the crown salute, more people in the world will know about it." Mr. Zhuang said this for a while and asked, "Will you do the crown salute?" Zhou Man didn't do the wedding ceremony. At that time, he only ate a meal of noodles at home, and he wasted the rice cake that Zheng's family had prepared for her, although it was still worn on her head. Bai Shan and Bai Erlang were not so sure, they looked at each other and nodded under Mr. Zhuang's gaze, "Yes." Mr. Zhuang automatically thought that he would, and nodded, "That's good, if it doesn't happen by chance, then ask for leave. You and the crown have a crown ceremony leave." "That's right, Dajin is so humane, it also has crown ceremony leave, officials and crown can take 1 to 3 days of vacation." Bai Shan decided to neutralize it and take 2 days. "Okay, you all retire." After finishing speaking, Mr. Zhuang stared at Bai Shan, and said, "You two will be married the day after tomorrow, and the betrothal gifts are only delivered today, so you shouldn't meet again." He didn't finish his words, but his meaning was very clear. "Are you not leaving now?" Bai Shan could only bow and retire. After he went out, he couldn't help but complain in a low voice, "Why did you drive me away, sir? Man Bao sent people to the door and waved to the two of them, "Goodbye. They won't be able to meet after today until they get married. Of course, it's not too long, only 2 days, no, it's only 1.5 days. After Man Bao packed up his belongings, he wrote it on the dowry list, which could be used as a facade, and copied the dowry gift from the Bai family to make a long one-fold list. Qian asked her to try on the changed wedding dress. In the past, the sleeves were a bit long, but today is different from the past. The wedding dress does not need to be stretched out to be worn later. Manbao's wedding dress is very complicated, so it cannot be worn every day like in the countryside. Very high, it must be just right. This wedding dress has been changed twice. Last time, it was because she came out of Daming Palace that she lost a lot of weight, so her waist needed to be made smaller. This time, she found that the cuffs were a little long. Man Bao put it on. Even though she had seen it twice, she couldn't help but look surprised and relieved when she looked at it again. She took her hand and said, "It looks good." Zhou Lijun, who was sitting beside him, also felt good looking, and couldn't help but said, "My aunt is getting better and better. That is, I always wear official uniforms on weekdays, rarely wear fancy clothes, and rarely apply rouge, so I didn't notice it." Man Bao became complacent, but when she thought of the words that Mr. Zhuang gave her, she accepted it and said reservedly, "It's okay, it's just so-so, mainly because my parents are good looking." She couldn't help but nodded her forehead and smiled. "What kind of weird thing is the saying?" She smiled and said, "You have a lot of friends. I will ask your nephews and nieces and your fourth brother to send you there tomorrow. When you have a bridal chamber, you should stop in moderation, and don't make a fool of yourself, you know." Man Bao nodded and said to her, "Don't worry, I have invited Madame Tang and her cousin, and second sister Fu to give me a raid, and Bai Er and Yin or Lu Huan are watching, they can't bully me." "And what are they afraid of?" "Well, they will always get married, even those who have already been married are not afraid. In the future, they will always have to examine officials, to be promoted, and they will always have to hold banquets. Who is afraid of whom?" See you tomorrow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2507. Man Bao slept beautifully and woke up according to the previous biological clock. She opened her eyes for a while before she remembered that she was married today. Keek said to the host sternly, "Congratulations to the host." Only then did Man Bao feel a little bit, got up and said, "Thank you." Man Bao asked while getting up and getting dressed, "Keek, won't you give me a present?" Keek was stagnant for a while before the system reacted. It subconsciously checked the points that it had not yet used to update the evolution, and then calculated how many points it needed to update the next evolution. Finally, he opened them all by himself. Unfolded in Man Bao's mind and asked, "What does the host want?" Man Bao smiled, "I like everything you give me." Keek wanted to spend 10 points to buy a pot of flowers for her, but he restrained the urge, and after a careful selection in the mall, he chose a very new style bracelet for her. This is a colorful gold bracelet. It is lavender as a whole, as clear as crystal, but as moist as jade. The bracelet is inlaid with 5 different gems. It is very beautiful. One of the red ones is the most beautiful, but it is not real gems, but high-tech products made like gems. The red gem cover can be opened, and inside is a screen setting, which says, "This is the latest portable purifier, the latest version you gave to Princess Mingda." In addition to the price of the bracelet itself and the 4 real gems above, it is not cheap. The main thing is that these gems look similar to their world, but they are completely different structures. It is much harder than them, and can slowly affect the development of the human body in a good direction. Man Bao was speechless. I've seen it before, it's very expensive. Keek was actually a bit tangled. The data had been tugging back and forth for a while, but it was the host's big marriage, and he thought it should have some indication. However, it knows that this behavior cannot be known to the main system, so it is modifying the data now. Although the main system generally does not check the income and expenditure accounts of the subsystem, what if it does? Keek does not allow himself to make a little mistake here. When Man Bao received such a gift, he was so happy that he threw himself on the bed and rolled around excitedly. His eyes were bright and he said, "Keek, I love you to death." Zibing just brought hot water over. He didn't hear the first two words, but vaguely heard the last sentence. He couldn't help blushing and knocked on the door. "Sir, are you awake?" Man Bao just got out of bed and opened the door. Zibing blushed and jokingly said, "My lord loves young Master Bai so much," and he shouted that he loves him early in the morning. Man Bao said, 11 Bing, be careful, I will marry you out." Zibing stuck out his tongue, not afraid of Zhou Man. She put the hot water on the shelf and said, Sir, they have already woken up. What do you want for breakfast? I will bring it." Man Bao thought for a while and said, "Eat whatever you want, my mother said that you can't eat too much on the wedding day." Although she was getting married for the first time, she did not see many people getting married. Knowing that the bride was inconvenient on the day, she should eat and drink less, and then eat and drink with confidence when she entered the bridal room. When the cake was ready, he went to bring a plate of small buns and some side dishes to Man Bao. After breakfast, Man Bao went for a walk in the garden, loosening his muscles and bones before coming back. Only then did the old Zhou family come over and ask people to put on her wedding dress and prepare her makeup. They got married before dusk, but the guests came to the door at noon, and the Bai family had to come to the door before the auspicious noon to welcome their relatives. Bai Shan invited many friends to follow him to the door, but Man Bao also invited many friends to help block the door. Hearing the sky-shattering laughter coming from outside the mansion, Man Bao couldn't help but pricked up his ears. Mrs. Tang and Wang Rule and Fu Wenayun came in with smiles on their faces, and smiled as soon as they entered the door. Bai Shan and the others passed the main entrance and are being blocked by the second door. Man Bao tilted his head and asked, "Is that gate guarded by Xiang Mingxiu?" "Yes, it's not easy," Mrs. Tang said with a smile. "Xiang Mingxiu's questions are very tricky, I think they will have to wait for a while. Your senior is watching the fun at the third gate, I think he is eager to try." It is estimated that Bai Shan will be embarrassed. Seeing that she didn't respond, Mrs. Tang nodded her forehead and said, "You don't have to worry about your little conscience." Man Bao shook his head, "I'm not worried, it's auspicious time, my brother and the others are measured." But Bai Shan was so anxious that he was sweating. It was already October and the sky was cold, but his forehead was sweating. Although Big Brother Zhou and the others would not let them miss the auspicious time, it would be very inappropriate for the Yu family to release water and enter by themselves. The same. But Bai Shan's brain is not very good today, he thinks it's because he didn't sleep well last night, so he can't stop looking at yin or. What Xiang Ming learned was 4 anagrams. Yin or thought for a while before saying unsurely, "The answer is Fen, Kia, Lu, Shat." The people in the door didn't say whether it was right or wrong, and opened the door directly. When the young people saw it, they cheered, and immediately crowded around Bai Shan and squeezed in. Everyone was noisy all the way to the third door. Madame Tang listened to the movement and smiled with Man Bao, "You won't resign after you get married?" Man Bao blinked his eyes in confusion and asked, "Why did you resign?" Madame Tang smiled and shook her head, "It's nothing, Bai Shan and the Bai family are really enlightened, you are a lucky person." Man Bao smiled slightly and nodded, she knew she was a blessed person. Both Wang Rule and Fu Wenayun are envious, but Zhou Man was an imperial doctor from the beginning, so it is not too difficult for people to accept. She is more free than ordinary women, which is really a very enviable thing. Especially Fu Wen'an, she has been familiar with poetry and books since she was a child. She once grew up with Man Bao, and even once shared a common ideal. Unfortunately, she is now trapped in the back house, and she has stepped out of a higher and wider sky. Fu Wen'an said sternly, "The Bai family is open-minded and generous, you must have a good life." Man Bao froze for a moment and then nodded. She is no longer a child, and she naturally knows how rare it is for her to be an official in the court. In the future, there may be more and more women serving as officials in the court, so she won't seem abrupt and rare, but at this time, she is indeed the only one. She is grateful for the generosity of those along the way. Just thinking about it, there was a noise outside, and Zhou Liru ran in excitedly and shouted, little ant, they have entered the main courtyard." Just as she finished speaking, Xiao Qianshi came over with laughter and tears in her eyes to pick up the treasure, and took her to the main hall just like marrying Daya before. Bai Shan was already standing in the main hall, and when he heard the footsteps, he looked back with a smile, and when he saw Man Bao wearing a phoenix crown and a wedding dress, he couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. Man Bao met his gaze, smiled slightly, and then lowered his head. Bai Shan was even more stunned, only to feel the heart in his chest beating violently, as if it was about to jump out, and his hands and feet were a little numb. See you at 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2508. When Man Bao met his star-like eyes, his heart was sweet and numb, and his cheeks were redder than rouge. The two of them just stood there and looked at each other silently, and supported Xiao Qian, who was full of treasure, and stopped and waited for a while. Seeing that the little ant did not respond, they reached out and pulled her, and the matchmaker beside her clapped her hands and laughed loudly, "Come on, come on. Come on, the bride and groom have their eyes on it, how can they get it when it comes to the bridal chamber?" Man Bao and Bai Shan regained consciousness at the same time and blushed at the same time. Zhao Liaolang and the others immediately shouted excitedly after seeing it, "Yo, yo." The tears in Xiao Qian's eyes disappeared, only a smile remained, and he led Man Bao towards Bai Shan. Bai Shan looked down at her with a smile in his eyes, and the matchmaker saw that he only saw the bride in his eyes, and while holding back a smile, she pushed him and said with a smile, "The bride and groom are in love, come and see the in-laws and the in-laws." Mrs. The matchmaker pulled the two of them together, shouted for tea to be brought up, and then reached out and pressed them down, making them kneel on the futon. Man Bao and Bai Shan both knelt blushing. Bai Shan first called Lao Zhutu, father-in-law. Old Zhutu was looking at Man Bao. Although his heart was sour, he was still stable. He mainly knew that even if Man Bao got married, he would come back in 3 days. Hearing Bai Shan's cry, he turned his head to look at him. Seeing that he was dressed in a happy dress, his face was pale and red. He didn't know many words of praise, but he felt that the other party was handsome. Seeing this, he felt much more comfortable. Their family is full of treasures and not everyone can marry them. Seeing the tea served in front of him, Lao Zhutu reached out and took a sip, and said to Bai Shan, "You have to treat our family Man Bao well. Although her brothers are not as promising as you, she has 6 brothers." Bai Shan, "Yes, follow the teachings of my father-in-law." The onlookers laughed loudly. If this is someone else's house, if the husband-in-law said something like this, the son-in-law who couldn't help but be angry would turn out to be ugly. But here, everyone can laugh to their heart's content, and some people coax, "Bai Shan, which of the 6 elder brothers of Lord Zhou can you beat?" Bai Shan slandered, "Of course anyone can fight, not to mention the boxing skills he learned from Daji since he was a child, and the skills he has consulted with Jigan in the past 6 months, he feels that he can beat most people in this world, no people who have learned Kung Fu." Bai Shan slandered in his heart, but his face was innocent, and he glanced at Lao Zhutu with some trepidation. When Lao Zhou first saw it, he waved at the people who were yelling, "Go, go, why are his brothers hitting him when he has nothing to do? So you can call if you have something to do. Remember, brothers, you must call Bai Shan when you go to Chunfenglu in the future." The matchmaker threw the handkerchief at them, and seeing that they were not very old, she asked with a smile, "Have the gentlemen married? If not, come back and find me, and I will bring Master Bai to the door to help you welcome your marriage." The people who were making a fuss suddenly didn't dare to make trouble, and could only try to hold back the urge to laugh and joke. It would be bad if Bai Shan really took revenge in the future. Bai Shan took the next cup of tea and gave it to Qian. Qian took it, drank tea and smiled, "Good boy, you two grew up together, and you know the best. You know our family is full of treasures. If you're angry, tell us back and we'll take care of her for you. Good guy, the Zhou family is also very fond of Zhou Man, who married a daughter instead of telling her daughter to be filial to the family member, be friendly to the sister-in-law, take care of the sister-in-law, etc." Qian's words were not finished, she and Bai Shan finished talking to Man Bao. "Your mother-in-law and grandmother are both easygoing people. When you arrive there, you must listen to your grandmother's words, take care of your mother-in-law, and get along well with your husband, do you know?" Man Bao nodded, blushing and said, "I know, mother." Seeing that the little girl was not at all hard to leave, she couldn't help sighing in her heart, but she felt that this child was too worrying. It is different from being married and not being married. Even if the two families still live together, then it's different, but the child obviously hasn't reacted yet. However, she didn't point it out, and after a few more words, Zhou Dalan came to carry his sister out. Zhou's house is too big, even if the main hall is not far from the gate, it is still a long distance. Fortunately, Man Bao is not particularly heavy. She hugged Zhou Dalan's neck and watched with great interest as everyone happily surrounded them as they went out. Someone in front of him ordered firecrackers, and Zhou Dalan carried Zhou Man out to the sound of firecrackers. Bai Erlang was watching, seeing that Zhou Dalan's eyes were all red, but Zhou Man's face was red with a shy smile, and he couldn't help it. He went up to her and whispered to her, "You are crying, there are so many guests here today, and there are people from the Xia family in Shangzhou. Girls don't cry when they get married. People think that your Zhou family treats you badly." Woolen cloth. When Man Bao heard this, he immediately took out a handkerchief from his sleeve and wiped it at the corner of his eyes. His eyes immediately turned red, and his eyes were immediately watered by a surge of air. Bai Erlang was satisfied. After the firecrackers were released, Thursday Lang looked back at his sister, and his eyes turned red, and he couldn't help feeling sad. As expected, it was just like what Xiang Ming said, that time was like a fast-running horse, or a wild horse that ran loose. The kind that won't look back once he runs away. His little sister, who used to only be on his butt, is now married. Sad. Thursday Lang was only sad for a short while before being crowded out. There were people's heads in front of him in an instant, and he couldn't even see it. Zhou Dalan put Man Bao on the sedan chair, then took a step back, and turned to look for Shai Zilang, who was giving off the marriage, to tell him, but found that most of the classmates and friends of Bai Shan and Man Bao were around, and they couldn't find Shai Zilang at all. The matchmaker followed step by step with her rich experience. When she saw the bride getting on the sedan chair, she immediately waved her handkerchief and said loudly, "The groom gets on the horse, the bride gets on the sedan chair, get up from the sedan." Bai Erlang and others had the experience of welcoming his brother to his brother once. They had already grabbed their own and went immediately, and when the sedan chairs were together, they walked with their heads held high. On the contrary, he miscalculated the lively Shiro and the others, but they took 2 steps to keep up. As soon as the joy sounded, the dowry that was carried one after another was carried out from the Zhou residence, and after leaving Chongyuan Square, it wandered along the inner city. Of course, they didn't go back to Changqing Lane directly, but walked around the inner city to fully show their dowry and joy, and by the way, they handed out wedding candy and wedding cakes to the children who joined in the fun, and then they turned back to Changqing Lane. When people on the street heard 11 Le, they knew that someone was getting married, and they all gave way to clear the way. When they saw the dowry that was being carried one after another, they all started to talk about it. Whose marriage is this? There are a lot of dowries. Kongai Yuanfang was lively in the early morning this morning. Should it be the nobles over there? I don't know, it's the Imperial Dr. Zhou of the Thai hospital. I just caught a handful of wedding candy in front of me. It's not over yet, it's still a long time. It will probably end when the second child is born with the Xia surname, and it will end like this in July. The next chapter is around 9 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2509. When I heard that Zhou Man from the Taiyuan hospital got married, many people followed the wedding team. Who are you married to? Who else could it be? Naturally, it's the Bai family who sued the imperial court with her. I heard that he is also a very powerful gentleman. He passed the examination early on as a jinchi, and now he is also an official. The people who heard it exclaimed and said, "It's made in heaven. It's still a childhood sweetheart." Everyone walked forward with the welcoming team. The more people walked, the more people joined in. Many children got into the happy team, and ran back and forth around the people who carried the burdens and horses. He grabbed candy and distributed it to them, and wanted them to go out, but they were unwilling. They ran along with the welcoming team, singing nursery rhymes loudly and joyfully, and followed them around the inner city. Bai Shan couldn't help but look back while riding on the horse, then smiled, turned back and said to Bai Erlang, "Let someone go back and tell me to prepare more sweet wine, and put it outside the alley to share with those who come to send us happy." He added, "Prepare more candies." Bai Erlang passed the word, and one of the servants broke away from the slow and leisurely welcoming team, and took a shortcut and ran back. Bai Shan sat on the horse, facing the overwhelming congratulations, clenching his fists and thanking him. When Master Tang saw it while riding on his horse, he secretly laughed and cursed Stinky Boy, then turned around and ordered Mingli, "The Huixianya has dispatched some people to Changqing Lane to prepare in advance. There are many people going, so don't make trouble." Obviously, he also sneaked away. Someone saw Bai Shan smile in the restaurant on both sides of the road, and couldn't help but say, "The bridal candle is one of the three joys in life." The ancients honestly did not deceive me. Some outsiders didn't know Bai Shan, and after seeing it, they asked, "Which family's son is this?" Feng Shen is handsome, not only good looking, but also has a good temperament. Bai Shan walked around the inner city with the welcoming team, and then turned back to Changqing Alley. They went for more than an hour. Far away, the relatives of the Bai clan who were waiting at the entrance of the alley could not help but feel sour. This boy Bai Shan has good fortune. Today is enough for him to be proud. The people standing at the entrance of the alley are all children of the same age as Bai Shan, who were students of the same age as Bai Shan. They came to the door automatically. Mrs. Lu insisted that there was no need for Bai Shan, and she wanted to give Bai Shan some more face, so she used all these people. Seeing that the welcoming team was getting closer, one person pushed the clan brothers and said, "Hurry up and order the firecrackers." The brothers just went up to order the firecrackers. With the crackling sound, the welcoming team was getting closer and closer, and when the people in the Bai's yard heard the sound of firecrackers, they knew that the greeting team was back, and immediately got ready to prepare happily, and some people ran away. "Notify Mrs. Lu and Mrs. Zheng." Madame Lu immediately asked, "How long until the auspicious time?" "There are still 3/4 of an hour." Seeing Mrs. Liu's worry, Mrs. Bai, who was supporting her, smiled and said, "Don't worry, Auntie, the matchmaker you hired is the best official media in Chang'an County. She must know the time, neither will come in early and you won't be late." That's right. After the welcoming team slowly arrived at the gate of Bai's house, the matchmaker began to embarrass Bai Shan, took his hand and warned, "This kicking of the sedan door is very particular, and it's not just His Majesty's Imperial Doctor sitting here. She is still a little genius doctor in the capital, and more importantly, your senior sister, so the bridegroom officer, how do you want to kick the sedan door?" As soon as everyone heard it, they immediately started booing, some shouted kick hard, and some shouted for Bai Shan not to kick the door, but directly greeted the bride. The matchmaker did not stop everyone from having fun this time. When everyone gave Bai Shan an idea, she raised her hand slightly, and when everyone was quiet, she joined in the fun, smiling until her eyes were full. Bai Erlang, who was almost invisible, pulled him over and asked with a smile, "Why don't you let the second young master Bai give you an idea? This one is your senior brother and the other is your senior sister. How do you think this door should be kicked?" Bai Shan just looked over and forced him with his eyes. Bai Erlang stayed for a while. What does this have to do with him? Didn't he come to see the fun? But Bai Erlang rolled his eyes and remembered how long ago, he had been targeted and oppressed by Zhou Man, so he was wicked, raised his hand to cover his mouth, and whispered between the matchmaker and Bai Shan, "Kick it hard, don't be a coward." He said, "It's only once in a lifetime." Everyone pricked up their ears and listened. Most people didn't hear it, but Yin or Zhao Liaolang, who was curious, heard it. Zhao Liaolang immediately shouted, Bai Erlang said, "I want to kick it hard. Only once in a lifetime." Those who had this suggestion immediately shouted loudly, and asked Bai Shan to do it. Bai Erlang was unhappy and shouted, "I didn't say that, don't wrong me. Zhao Liaolang, I heard it all. Your words are credible or mine are credible. Yin Or's words are credible. If you don't believe it, ask Yin Or." Everyone looked at Yin Or together. Yin Or nodded slightly, "Yes." "Oh, Bai Erlang, you're done, wait for your senior sister to come out, ha 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 ha. Don't worry about the future, let's focus on the present moment. Bai Hanlin, your younger brother said that he was kicking, so it can be seen that he is also on your side, but you are kicking." Bai Shan raised his foot, turned around and kicked Bai Erlang's ass without saying a word, but nothing was better than nothing, and everyone was even more noisy. It turns out that Bai Hanlin is really scared. Oh, it seems that the next lady with vinegar will be Lord Zhou. Man Bao sat in the sedan and waited. He was not in a hurry when he heard these words. Seeing that he didn't seem to want to get off the sedan immediately, he looked at the time in the system. Only then did he understand that it was a little early. So she took out the purse in her sleeve, took out a small snack and ate it in small bites. After filling her somewhat hungry stomach, she patted the leftover crumbs and sat and waited honestly. The outside finally quieted down, and then she heard a soft sound from the sedan door, and then there was a neat woo from the outside, then the sedan curtain was pulled open, and the matchmaker stuck her head in with a smile on her face. "Ouch, you guys are just jealous, this is because the groom knows how to hurt people, the bride is so lucky." The groom only touched the sedan door lightly. After that, the groom will follow his wife, and he will be beautiful. The matchmaker's words were nice, and Man Bao pursed his lips and smiled. Bai Shan also stretched out his hand to help her with a smile on his face. Everyone once again called, but their faces were full of smiles that reached the back of their ears, crowding the newcomers to the door. The matchmaker stood by to give them directions, let Man Bao step over the brazier, and then enter the gate. When the servants in the door saw it, they rushed to the main courtyard to tell him, and shouted, "The bride has entered the door, the bride has entered the door, the auspicious time has arrived." When Zhou Man and Bai Shan walked to the main hall, it happened to be an auspicious time, and the matchmaker grasped it sooner or later, and it turned out to be the first-class official media in Chang'an County. See you tomorrow. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2510. Mrs. Lu stood up excitedly, then sat back again, watching with bright eyes. Seeing Bai Shan and Zhou Man coming in with the red silk, Mrs. Liu's eyes were full of relief. The matchmaker and Bai Dalan led them to the front, and Bai Dalan stood beside Mrs. Lu with a smile and shouted loudly, "Newcomer to dash. He is the bridesmaid today." The auspicious words were written early in the morning, and he read them according to them. Bai Dalan practiced a lot in private, so he read them out smoothly now, and shouted, "The bride and groom meet the high hall, kneel." Man Bao and Bai Shan knelt down holding the red silk, and Bai Dalan said loudly, "Cow down." The two bowed down to Madame Lu. Madame Lu nodded again and stretched out her hand, "Get up quickly." Bai Dalan said loudly, "Cow again." The two changed their positions and bowed to Zheng Shi. Zheng Shi was also very excited, nodded again and raised his hand to get them up. Bai Dalan said loudly, "The husband and wife pay their respects." The matchmaker helped them turn to face each other, and Bai Dalan said excitedly, "Kneel." Then shouted, "Cow." Everyone stared to see who bowed their heads first. Man Bao and Bai Shan obeyed the order and bowed their heads at the same time. Everyone snorted and was very sorry, but waited for Bai Dalan to shout, "Complete the ceremony." Everyone rushed up to surround the two of them, and coaxed them to send them to the bridal chamber. Bai Erlang and Yin or Lu Huan were also booing, and they were about to go to the bridal room. Thursday Lang squeezed in and pulled Bai Erlang and Yin or out. Lu Huan rushed to the other side. He dragged the two of them and shouted, "What are you kidding? You are the ones who hold the line." Bai Erlang and Yin or K remembered their responsibilities, and quickly apologized, "Brother Bai, let Brother Bai be the boss," and we didn't react for a while. Bai Dalan came over and said proudly, "I have experience with this. I walk around and pull up a few people at a time. The more people who stay in the new room, the more chaotic it becomes, and people will be pulled out in a while." So everyone went to the new house. The wedding was not over yet, so everyone crowded into the new room together. Because there were too many people, even the screen that separated the inner room and the outer room was put away. Man Bao stepped on the pedals, and sat on the bed with a flushed face. He felt a little numb under his buttocks. He touched it calmly, and grabbed a handful of red dates. She held it in her hand and didn't move. She covered it with her wide sleeves and wiped it quietly. Bai Shan moved towards her, ignoring everyone's sudden burst of laughter. His wide sleeves and Man Bao's sleeves layer upon layer intertwined, grabbing her hand through the cover of her sleeve. Man Bao raised his eyes to look at him, there seemed to be water in his eyes. Bai Shan hooked her fingers, not letting her eat, and then glanced at the others in the room. In the eyes of Zhao Liaolang and Feng Zonping, it was clear that the two were flirting with each other in front of their faces, so shameless. "Did you meet before marriage? Is childhood sweetheart great? Who hasn't been married yet?" The matchmaker held a tray and smiled and parted the crowd. Madame Tang and the other female relatives took this opportunity to follow the matchmaker to the front. None of the gentlemen present dared to provoke these ladies, so they squeezed to the side. When Man Bao saw them, his hands were still, and he didn't dare to move, his fingers were still entangled in Bai Shan's sleeves. The matchmaker handed the tray to Julan next to her, and said with a smile, "The groom is overjoyed, the bride is overjoyed, the groom and the bride are talented and beautiful, they look like a match made in heaven." The auspicious words were said as if they didn't want money. She reached out and took the wine jug and poured wine into the silver cup. She smiled and said, "After drinking the wine today, the bridegroom and the bride will share the blessings and sorrows, and help each other." Man Bao raised one hand to take the wine glass, her fingers were hooked, she subconsciously raised her eyes to look at Bai Shan, who was also looking at her with the wine, The two smiled at each other, and Bai Shan hooked Man Bao. He took out the wine glass with his hand, and drank this glass of wine with Man Bao. Seeing the smiles of the two of them, everyone felt sour in their hearts. The majority of those present were already married. After all, there were only a few who had not been married in their 19 or 20s. They have all experienced new marriages, but whose new marriages have the knowledge and sweetness they have? Many times, newlyweds are just groping with a complete stranger to live their lives. There is happiness, but anxiety and unease, as well as strangeness, must be the most. Therefore, jealousy is beyond recognition, and people including Bai Dalan thought that it would be good to have a good bridal chamber in a while. After drinking the wine, the matchmaker happily used scissors to cut a bundle of their hair, then tied the two bundles of hair together and tied the knot directly. She put the knotted hair in a box and pressed it under the head of the bed. Then she took a step back and happily announced, "Lycan, congratulations to the groom and the bride, the newlyweds are happy." She just announced this, and the room immediately burst into cheers, and one person came up with 2 cups and a pot of wine and shouted, "Let's gossip, let's invite the bridegroom and bride to drink 3 glasses of wine first." Julan and Wuojo immediately pulled the matchmaker aside and gave her 2 red envelopes, and said in a low voice, "Our old lady said that our husband and wife have many friends. I have to ask you to help me keep it under control." The matchmaker understood, took the red envelope and tucked it into her sleeve, patted her chest and assured, "Don't worry, the 2 little ladies, with me watching, there won't be too many mistakes." This was a dismount, led by Zhao Liaolang and Feng Zhongping, and everyone followed suit, drinking 3 glasses of wine before talking about other things. Bai Shan glanced at the 2 of them. They were both married, especially Zhao Liaolang. He got married too early, and Bai Shan regretted not being able to attend. He stretched out his hand to take the wine glass and ate 3 glasses in a row, his already red face even redder. Man Bao also drank 2 cups. Zhao Liaolang stopped him when he was about to drink the 3rd cup and said with a smile, "How can I let the bride drink by herself? Why should the groom help?" "Well, let the bride drink half a cup. The bridegroom is ready to drink half a glass." Man Bao gave him a deep look, drank half a glass of wine, and handed it to Bai Shan. Bai Shan reached out and took it. "Humph, it's not mouth to mouth, who is afraid of who?" They not only ate in the same pot when they were young, but also slept in the same couch in the morning. Everyone saw that the 2 people's faces were flushed, and they couldn't tell whether it was from blush or from drinking and drinking. The main reason was that the faces of the 2 were too indifferent. "It's boring, I knew it would be mouth to feed them, no, it would be disrespectful, this is not Jiao Fangxi, nor Chunfenglu." Everyone winked, and then led Zhao Liaolang out. He snapped open the folding fan, shook it, winked at Bai Shan and said, "Bai Hanlin, you are well informed, do you know why the bridal chamber is called a bridal chamber?" Before Bai Shan could speak, Man Bao raised his hand and said, "I know." Everyone was stunned for a moment, and they all looked at Zhou Man. This is not good, although you are an imperial doctor, is it not good to answer this kind of question?" Man Bao said solemnly, "It is said that after the Yellow Emperor defeated the Chu tribe, in order to allow the newly added members of the Chu tribe to integrate into the Huaxia tribe alliance, the Yellow Emperor stipulated that the Chu tribe was not allowed to acquire women through plunder. Once the relationship is established, the family will prepare a cave for the couple to live in, and over time, the newlyweds will have a deep relationship and can live together forever." Zhao Liaolang was stunned, and the young people behind him were also stunned. Madame Tang couldn't help covering her mouth and laughing, holding back her tears hard. See you at 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2511. Zhao Liaolang rolled his eyes and asked, "Does the bride know how to enter the bridal chamber?" Man Bao looked at him deeply and asked, "What do you think?" Zhao Liaolang met her gaze, raised his hand and slapped his mouth. Needless to say, this one has even been cured of the prince's infertility, and even delivered children. For the true meaning of life, I'm afraid no one present is more thorough than her. So about the explanation of Dongfu, she also did it on purpose. Zhao Liaolang felt that he had met an opponent, so he gave up the competition of knowledge and simply used brute force. He took an apple from the table next to him, tossed it, and said, "In this way, let's play the game of eating apples." In the Jiaofang Si, he can not only let people eat apples, but also eat beans and wine, but neither of them is suitable for this place. He didn't want to come up with such an idea. But Zhou Man's career makes her invincible in this regard, and it is obviously impossible for this bride to be shy and shy. So go ahead. They decided to focus on embarrassing Bai Shan. Zhao Liaolang threw the apple in his hand and handed it to Julan next to him. "Go, put it on your wife's fingertips, Bai Hanlin. You have to hang upside down from the bed and eat the apple until you finish eating this apple." Julan reached out to take it, but couldn't help but look at Bai Shan and Zhou Man. Bai Shan asked, "When are you going to make trouble? Spring night is worth $1,000, I can't accompany you all the time, there are elders and guests in front of you, so let's make a way, and after the trouble, let's go. How about the drinking competition ahead?" Zhao Liaolang rejoiced, "Oh, in the past, I only poured 3 cups. Bai Hanlin, who even drank yellow wine with a glass of wine, was eager to fight with us." When everyone heard that Bai Shan was in a hurry, they immediately cheered up. As long as the groom and the bride were in a hurry, they would be happy. Bai Shan sat on the wedding bed and waited for them to make a decision. The matchmaker also came forward and said with a smile, "The gentlemen are also considerate of our groomsmen. This is the first time. Seeing that our groomsmen are tender-faced, we turn to the elders in front of them to ask, and the gentlemen are not easy to answer." Mrs. Tang and the others looked at it with a smile and did not interrupt. After all, it is not too much now. But Zhao Liaolang and others, because of their onlookers, couldn't help thinking for a while, and said with a smile, "Okay, eat and play with this apple, he will eat a jujube according to our method, and then answer our question. It's over for the night." Then Julan smiled and took the apple up and put it on Man Bao's index finger. Zhao Liaolang looked excited and said happily, "Let's talk about it first. If this apple falls, we will replace it with a new one until it is eaten all the way without falling." Bai Shan took a deep look at Zhao Liaolang, then got up. He tied his wedding robe in his belt, looked at his bed, and then lightly stepped on the table beside him, grabbed the top of the bed with one hand and jumped, and the person was overwhelmed. He flew upside down, his feet were hanging on the top of the bed, his head was down, and he was facing the startled Man Bao. Man Bao looked at Bai Shan, who was hanging upside down, his face was white and red, and his eyebrows were picturesque. The two of them looked at each other, and he smiled. After Man Bao was frightened, he exclaimed, "You and Jigan learned it? It's so powerful? Why can't I learn it?" "No, because I'm locked in Huangchuang, I can learn it like this." The onlookers Zhao Liaolang and the others were stunned for a moment. Bai Shan didn't collapse the bed as they wished, and then they were speechless. Zhou Man's focus was too strange. Study. Bai Shan relied on that he was facing Man Bao upside down, with the back of his head facing Zhao Liaolang and others, so he smiled brightly at her and whispered, "If you want to learn, I will teach you later." Man Bao thinks this is a good idea, so that she can learn her skills without going to Huguo Temple. Zhao Liaolang seemed to know that they were flirting with each other, and shouted dissatisfiedly, "You stop whispering, hurry up and hurry up." Man Bao looked at the apple on his fingertips, then glanced at Bai Shan, his fingertips quietly bent down, and after holding the apple, he gently placed his thumb on one side of the apple, and then moved the other side quickly into Bai Shan's mouth. Bai Shan cooperated tacitly and started to chew. Everyone heard the sound of him eating an apple, and then felt that something was not right. Bai Shan was hanging upside down, with his back facing them, and his clothes were too large to block their sight. So Zhao Liaolang and the others squeezed to the side to look around. Man Bao smartly dropped his thumb, and Bai Shan also relaxed. I really ate it on my fingertips. Zhao Liaolang and others were stunned. They had played this game many times in Jiaofang Division, and basically no one could do it. In the end, they played something else, such as tying an apple with a rope. Get up and hang two people to eat together. Zhao Liaolang and the others simply squatted beside them and watched with bright eyes. They wanted to see how Bai Shan did it. No, it must not be because Bai Shan was better than them, but because Zhou Man was better than them and Bai Shan could do it. Arrive. So it's still too bad for the girls in Jiaofangxi and Chunfenglu. Bai Erlang also squeezed up to look at it curiously. After watching it for a long time, he didn't understand why it was difficult, so he looked at Zhao Liaolang with a puzzled face. Did you release water on purpose? Shiro and Bai Dalan, who were standing behind, raised their hands and gave him a hand. Which side are you from? Bai Erlang closed his voice instantly. Bai Shan blinked at Man Bao. Man Bao carefully removed the apple, and Bai Shan ate all the apples in his mouth before continuing. Seeing that the apple that moved past was about to fall, Zhao Liaolang cried out excitedly, and Feng Zonping and others also shouted, "Drop, drop, drop." It is impossible to fall. Man Bao stretched out his hand to hold it. Zhao Liaolang immediately shouted, "It is a foul with your hand, and you are not allowed to hold it with your hand." Man Bao supported it with his mouth, pressed the apple into Bai Shan's mouth, took a bite of the apple in Bai Shan's widened eyes, and ate a large piece directly. Zhao Liaolang and the others were stunned, and Madame Tang, who was about to speak out, was also shocked and looked at Man Bao. Man Bao chewed the apple and ate it, and squinted at it. Zhao Liaolang and others, who had wanted to speak out against it, were shocked by her tyrannical aura, and immediately stopped talking. Then Man Bao and Bai Shan ate the apple in one bite. In the end, the apple was pinched by Man Bao's two fingers, and they didn't object anymore. Bai Shan wiped his mouth, flew down from the upside-down bed, and looked at them. What else? Come. Zhao Liaolang looked at Bai Shan with a look of sympathy, and finally said, "Forget it, we won't eat the red dates, so let's ask you one last question." Originally, the red dates wanted to make fun of them and want them to be shy, but Zhou Man and Bai Shan ate an apple face to face, and they could watch them go out. They really didn't dare to come up with this idea again. So Zhao Liaolang stepped back a few steps, retreated into the crowd, and backed his friends to find a sense of security before saying, "Our question is, in this bridal chamber, are you on top, or is it Master Zhou? See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2512. After being stunned for a moment, Bai Shan blushed, and Man Bao's face also blushed. Seeing this, Mrs. Tang spat at him, "Go out, sisters, blast them out, a group of stinky men will give them the new house. It stinks." But seeing Bai Shan and Zhou Man blushing, the young people consciously regained their face, so they were satisfied, and without waiting for an answer, they shrugged their shoulders with laughter, and turned around and shouted, "Bai Shan, we are waiting for you outside. Drink, you won't go home tonight if you don't get drunk." That's right, let Lord Zhou give you a needle to hang over at night." Bai Erlang followed silly, but in order to show that he and Bai Shan were in the same group, he kicked them in the back to drive them faster. Yin He shook his head with a smile, and said to Bai Shan, "Zhou, I can't help you with this." Yin probably didn't help here, but it was a big weapon in the front. Out of envy and jealousy, everyone poured wine on Bai Shan together. Of course, there were a lot of people around Bai Shan, and they said that the three brothers, Zhou Lang, Wu Wu Lang, and Saturday Lang, who were married, would never allow them to get people really drunk, so they took turns to stop the wine. Bai Dalan can still be useful, but Bai Erlang and Lu Huan's drinking capacity is full of burdens. As soon as they came, they blushed when they were given 2 cups, which made Zhao Liaolang and the others couldn't help but burst into laughter. Don't play together. It's not like that, but the amount of alcohol is like 10%, no, we have to probe your bottom tonight. In the end, Bai Shan sacrificed yin or, a sharp weapon, and pulled the person to his side. As soon as someone toasted, his eyes were clouded, and he dragged yin or did not let go, so yin or said to help Bai Shan to drink. Who dares to let yin or replace the wine, is it too long? Although he looks weaker than the average person now, but with a deep-rooted impression of 20 years, who would dare to let the weakest man in the capital replace the wine? Even Zhao Liaolang woke up a little and walked away staggeringly. Bai Shan breathed a sigh of relief, and finally returned to the new house on the shoulders of Yin or Bai Erlang. As soon as he got to the main courtyard at the back, Bai Erlang released him. Bai Shan staggered 2 steps, burped a wine burp, and felt stinky himself. Bai Erlang stared at him. Aren't you really drunk? Bai Shan nodded. Drunk. Anyway, I feel dry mouth and blushing, and my head is a little dizzy. Is this not drunk or something? Bai Shan was a little aggrieved. They are too cruel. Wait, they will always get married sometime. Unless it's a continuation of the string, Yin, he said soberly, I saw it just now. The people who rush to toast in front are already married, such as Zhao Liaolang, Lu Yu, Feng Zongping, and Yi Ziang. Bai Shan's classmates and colleagues are few who have not married yet. Bai Shan pouted in grievance, walked to the new house, turned around and handed over to them. Thank you too for sending them back. You can go back, I can enter by myself. Yin He and Bai Erlang stopped, reached out and pushed the door open. Okay, you can go in. Bai Shan stumbled in. Julan and Mei, who were in the room, immediately stepped forward to help him, and Man Bao also stepped forward. Seeing that he was drunk, he breathed a sigh of relief. It's okay, I've prepared sober soup for you. Bai Shan was a little more awake, but was pulled by Man Bao and sat on the chair, with a bowl of sober soup in his hand. Bai Shan looked at it blankly, and said after a while, it looks so bitter. It's not bitter, it's sour, Man Bao said with certainty. Bai Shan just held up the bowl and drank it. After taking a sip, his brows wrinkled, and he said a little aggrieved, it's bitter, sour, and bitter. Man Bao sat aside and said, the effect is very good. Even Xiao Yu and Zheng said that my improved sobering soup is good. I will have someone soak some honey in vinegar water for you to drink a little more, and make a few trips. The latrine wine is gone. Bai Shan sighed, raised his hand and took another sip. His whole face wrinkled. He sighed again after drinking it, and then took another sip. Julan was on the sidelines before saying anything, wanting to say that it was not good to sigh when she was newly married, but after seeing it in May, she pulled Julan out with a smile, closed the door and waited in the corridor. A woman came up to ask questions. Young master is back, do you want to prepare food? May said, wait, I'm still sobering up. The old woman went down when she heard the words, and went back to report to the old lady. When Zheng Shi heard this, he was anxious. It's too violent in front of you, the bosses don't drink well, and those classmates and colleagues of Shenbao are messing around. He shouldn't be too tough to refuse, but so many people in the clan also following the commotion, I have to get the good treasure drunk. Mrs. Lu reassured her, relax, I've been keeping people watching. Fortunately, with the help of my uncles, he didn't drink too much. I watched it when he walked back, and he could walk steadily. Zheng Shi, what about the bridal chamber? Mrs. Lu frowned slightly and thought for a moment. No hurry, it's still early. Man Bao will make hangover soup. By the way, let the kitchen send some hangover soup made by Man Bao to the front, although this wine is good stuff, but not too much. Lele alone is not as good as all. After giving the order, he told the old lady, let the kitchen keep the water hot, and the prince and the lady are going to take a bath. The grandmother walked away. Man Bao rested his chin on the table and watched Bai Shan finish drinking the sober soup one by one. Seeing that the end of his eyes was a little red, and he was stunned, he couldn't help but laugh, and half of his face was buried in it. Into the arm. Bai Shan seemed to sense that she was laughing, so he looked down and saw that the corners of her eyes were laughing with tears in her eyes, so she couldn't help but smile, and then asked, "What are you laughing at?" Man Bao embarrassedly buried his entire face in his arms, then revealed his face to look at him secretly, and whispered, "You look good when you're drunk, you have a charming face." Bai Shan pursed his lips and smiled, perhaps because he was drunk, or because the two were already married. He was much more daring, and he leaned over to place a smack on her lips, pulled away slightly and asked, "Will you pour your heart out?" Man Bao's cheeks were flushed, but this time he didn't hide in his arms. Instead, he lowered his eyes slightly and nodded. Then he looked at him with moist eyes and said, "Yeah, softly, pour my heart out." Bai Shan's Adam's apple tightened, and he couldn't help lowering his head to cover her lips. Man Bao blushed and went to open the door, and said to Julan Mei, "He's sober up, you guys are going to take a bath." Julan and Mei immediately responded and happily went to fetch water. Bai Shan's face was also flushed, and he had sobered up quite a bit. At this time, his eyes were bright. He took off his coat and threw it on the wooden couch. He said to Man Bao, "I don't feel dizzy. Your sober soup really works." Man Bao muttered a few words, but Bai Shan didn't hear it, so he turned around and asked, "What?" "It's nothing," Man Bao said with a stern face, "I just opened the door, and I heard that it was still lively in front of me. It is estimated that I will not leave until curfew." Bai Shan looked at her quietly, with good reason to suspect that she was changing the subject, but whatever, Bai Shan went to the bathroom to shower and change. When both of them were sitting on the bed, Bai Shan and Man Bao were a little restrained again. The two sat side by side. Bai Shan scratched his head and coughed softly, "Man Bao, it's late at night, let's sleep." There was no curfew yet, and it wasn't really late at night, but Man Bao also nodded with a blushing face. The two put down the red tent and lay on the bed together. Bai Shan quietly reached out and held her hand. Man Bao didn't object, so he turned his head and looked at her sideways. It happened that Man Bao also looked over, and their eyes were bright. Yes, Bai Shan leaned closer and kissed her gently. Man Bao's heart was beating, and he felt a thumping sound in his ears. This is the wedding night. I don't like the phenomenon of lock chapters in this book, so whether it's inside or outside the book, see you tomorrow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2513. When Man Bao opened her eyes, she noticed a look. She tilted her head slightly and saw Bai Shan. He looked at her with a smile on his head. Man Bao blushed slightly, hugged the quilt and asked, "What time is it?" Bai Shan turned to look at the time, then retracted his head and said, "Chen Shi. This late?" Man Bao was about to sit up immediately, thinking about it badly, so he lay down again and said, "Get up quickly, Grandma Lu and Aunt Zheng are waiting for us." Bai Shan couldn't afford it. Instead, he approached and said, "Why do you still call Grandma Lu and Aunt Zheng? I'm going to change my words today." Man Bao's face turned even redder, he stretched out his hand and pushed his chest, feigning anger, "Get up quickly." Bai Shan quickly kissed her on the mouth, and then got up with a smile. Man Bao exhaled, reached out and closed the tent tightly before getting up. The two got dressed. Mei and Julan came in with a pot of hot water, and said to the two, "Master, lady, the elders of the clan have come." Bai Shan frowned slightly, and asked while twisting his face, "What are they doing here?" Wu Yu smiled and said, "The next day after the wedding, my wife is going to pay my respects to my uncle and aunt." Bai Shan's face was light. "Our family has a weak relationship with them. See you later." "Are they invited by your grandmother?" "That's not true," said Mei after stunned for a moment. "I said that I lived close by. I came here early this morning and wanted to see my new daughter-in-law." Man Bao had already washed his face, and said indifferently when he heard the words, "Let's see you when you see me. I'll see you in the evening and early in the morning. Mei, you go find some cakes, and ask her to put the shoes she's prepared on. Find out all kinds of things, and divide them according to the people who come, and you and Julan will give the greetings later." Bai Shan couldn't help turning his head to look at her. "Have you prepared so many greetings?" Man Bao smiled and said, "My sister-in-law prepared it for 2 months. After knowing that the Bai family in Longzhou lost money to buy this yard for Mrs. Liu, Xiao Jian's family was preparing. There is nothing precious, there are a lot of scattered fabrics at home, and the materials are not bad, so she made a lot of shoes, without asking how long the feet of the relatives of the Bai family are, and directly according to several nephews and nieces in the family, brother and sister-in-law. Feet. Which pair to give at that time? Let Mei and Julan roughly estimate their height by looking at them, they are all uninvited anyway." Man Bao washed up and sat in front of the dressing table. Bai Shan was eager to try. "Let me comb your hair." Man Bao looked at the time and said, "You can comb your hair, but the rest will be left to Julan." Bai Shan was very curious. "Then I will paint your eyebrows for you." Man Bao patted his hand and said, "If you are free in the future, Grandma is already waiting in front." Bai Shan felt infinite regret, and at the same time, he was even more unwelcome to those family members who came to the door. If it weren't for them, with the temperament of grandmothers, wouldn't they be as comfortable as they wanted to be? Mei and Julan smiled and stepped forward to serve, combing Man Bao's hair, and adorning the jewelry that Man Bao had chosen. Bai Shan had already crowned his hair, and when he saw this, he picked out a bunch of them and decorated them with one. The ruby forehead ornament, he smiled, "This is beautiful, wear this." Man Bao glanced at it and did not refuse. She rarely had the opportunity to wear such jewelry because it was inconvenient. Seeing that she didn't object, Mei took it over and put it on for her. Man Bao slightly tilted his head to look at himself in the bronze mirror, and Mei and Julan looked at this suddenly bright lady and were speechless for a while. Man Bao pursed his lips and smiled, and the familiar naive air came back. Mei and Julan breathed a sigh of relief. The bright and indifferent just now seemed to be an illusion. Man Bao remembered something, turned around and took out a string of bracelets from under the bed to put on his hands. Bai Shan's eyes were attracted by the bracelets and asked, "Where did this come from?" Man Bao glanced at him and said, "It was given by someone else." Bai Shan also looked at her. Only one person would be someone else in Man Bao's mouth. Bai Shan reached out and held her hand. "Let's go." The two were about to go to the main hall when a woman hurried over, followed by a cake carrying a tray. Zhou Man, who was dressed in full clothes, was also stunned for a moment. After recovering, he hurriedly stepped forward and saluted. "Lang Jun, madam, the old lady asked you to use something to fill your stomach before going." The western cake was brought to the tray, a plate of small steamed buns and pickles, and 2 bowls of goat milk. Bai Shan simply took Man Bao and turned back to the house to sit down, and waited for the cakes to put their things down before asking, "Why, are there many people here?" The old woman smiled and said, "The 3rd and 5th masters from my family have brought their wives. By the way, there is also the old lady from the 3rd room, who brought 2 young ladies and Lang Jun. That's a lot." Bai Shan took Man Bao to eat first. Man Bao drank the goat milk first, and the old woman was even happier when she saw that they ate deliciously. She also watched Bai Shan and Zhou Man grow up, and she was familiar with Zhou Man, so she did not shy away from saying, because it came suddenly, the old lady was afraid that the lady was not prepared, so she asked the lady to prepare some purses and a study room for you. She said, what the old lady means, the two little ladies will give you a purse and a handkerchief, and Lang Jun will give you a purse and a study room. Man Bao immediately said, I have prepared at home, and shoes. Shoes are a must for family recognition. When the old lady heard this, she immediately breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile, that's really good. I'll go talk to the old lady in a while. Seeing that the two of them ate all the small steamed buns in the plate in 2 or 3 times, they felt distressed for a while. It's too few, isn't it? Let the kitchen send 2 more plates. The young master and Miss Man have always had good appetites. In the past, each person could eat a large plate. How could such a small plate of steamed buns be enough? Man Bao immediately said, no, no, I have to have breakfast with my grandmother and mother later, this is to fill my stomach. The old woman thought so too, so she nodded and served them to the main hall. The guests in the main hall were chatting happily with Mrs. Liu, but they didn't seem to notice that Bai Shan and his wife were late. When the report came from outside, they couldn't help but sit up straight. Speaking of which, although they went to Zhou's house, I have visited Mrs. Liu several times, but I rarely meet this Lord Zhou. It's all because she's been busy with the Imperial Physician's Department of Acne vaccination. The third master Bai Min, sat up slightly and looked at the door with bright eyes. Bai Shan and Zhou Man came together. Seeing that she was dressed in a full-fledged dress, the usual 3 points were less charming and naive, and there were 3 more bright and indifferent. Zhou Man, a glimmer of light flashed in Mrs. Liu's eyes, the corners of her mouth became higher and higher, and there was an unconscious smile on her face. As soon as he entered the door, Man Bao couldn't help but smile when he saw Mrs. Liu and Mrs. Zheng, and the calm and stern face just now disappeared instantly. Mrs. Liu. Zheng, she breathed a sigh of relief, and smiled brightly. Sure enough, Man Bao was still the same Man Bao. See you at 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2514. Man Bao and Bai Shan knelt in front of Mrs. Liu. Man Bao served tea, and said crisply, meet your grandmother, Grandma. Mrs. Liu has restrained her emotions, looked at her lovingly, nodded and smiled, good boy. She took the tea and drank it, put it on the table and asked Madame Liu to give Man Bao a box, and said with a smile, this is the jewelry that your great-grandfather gave me when I got married. I can't use it now. Give you. Madame Liu opened it and showed Man Bao a glance. Everyone in the Bai family looked at it, but they couldn't take their eyes off it. Inside was a complete set of jade ornaments, with cyan and yellow floating in the top pair of jade bracelets. The third old lady looked at it with bright eyes. She knew the set of jade ornaments. She was also a sister-in-law. After decades, she naturally knew what Madame Liu's most proud set of dowry jewelry was. Unexpectedly, she was reluctant to give it to Zheng 20 years ago, but today she is willing to give it to this granddaughter-in-law. This is a set of Lanshan jade jewelry, not only jade bracelets, jade pendants, but also a jade buoy worth thousands of gold, a jade buoy with jade inlaid in gold, and all the jades are top-quality jade. Mrs. Liu's family was only such a direct daughter. I heard that at that time she married and took away almost half of the family's property. Among them, Mrs. Liu also spent a lot of money to go to Lanshan to ask for jade, and brought back a lot of Lanshan jade to make jewelry for her, not only jade buletin yao, there are even such things as jade belts. Now more than 40 years later, Lanshan jade has become rarer and rarer, and these things are even more precious. That's it, is their family still short of money? The third old lady couldn't help looking at Bai Min. Bai Min reluctantly looked away, whether she was really short of money or fake, the relationship between the two families had to be repaired. Bai Min so comforted himself, and felt a little better. Man Bao was also taken aback by the contents of this box. He often hangs out with Chang Yu, who loves gold, silver, and jade articles. Man Bao naturally knows how valuable the jade articles in this box are. She held the box and looked at Madame Lu, who smiled at her. "Why, don't you want it?" Man Bao immediately hugged the box and smiled sweetly. "Thank you, Grandma." Man Bao reluctantly handed the box to Mei, who was behind him, then got up and walked to Mrs. Zheng and knelt down. He raised his head and smiled sweetly. "Mother, please drink tea, please be safe." Zheng Shi nodded with a smile on her face, took the tea and drank it. She also gave Man Bao a set of jewelry, but it was gold, and the style was very delicate. Just one glance, Man Bao fell in love with it. She stood up holding the box, turned around and handed it to Mei, and then went to see the guest on the left. Madame Lu said, "This is your third grandmother." A woman brought the futon up, and Man Bao understood that this was also a kneeling, so he knelt down together with Bai Shan, offered tea, and said with a smile, "I see the third grandmother is safe." The third old lady nodded with a smile, took the tea and drank it, and asked the girl behind her to give the husband and wife the red seal prepared in the morning. After thinking about it, she still held Zhou Man's hand and put the jade bracelet on her wrist. "Roll it off and put it on her hand." Man Bao looked at Madame Lu hesitantly. Mrs. Lu smiled and nodded at her, and Man Bao accepted it, bowing her head slightly and smilingly thanking her. Then they visited the third uncle Bai Min and the third wife in turn, the fifth uncle Bai Hung and the fifth wife, and received 4 red seals, and then the 2 peers they brought. This requires Man Bao to give gifts, but fortunately, she was already prepared. When the gifts from Mrs. Jian and Mrs. Lu were mixed together, the little girl got 2 pairs of shoes, a purse with a silver naked child, and 2 handkerchiefs. What Lang Jun got was a study room, 2 pairs of shoes, and a purse with a silver nude. After the gifts were delivered, everyone was refreshed and moved to the dining room to eat. Man Bao consciously helped to put the tableware and chopsticks before they were set, and Mrs. Lu smiled and waved, "Okay, let the next person do these things, come and sit down, they got married yesterday, and they were very noisy. Are you all tired too?" Man Bao said with a smile, "I'm not tired," but still went to Mrs. Lu and sat down. The third old lady's eyes flickered slightly, and the third lady smiled and said, "My aunt really loves my grandson's daughter-in-law. It's a day's rule and I can't bear to stand it." Mrs. Lu smiled and said, "We have a small family, unlike your family Ding Xinguang who has so many rules. I also envy your mother-in-law, your rules are excellent even if the old people don't mention it. This child it's different. He Shanbao grew up together, I don't know her yet, I know what rules are good and what rules are bad, so I don't need to test her." Zheng Shi nodded slightly and said with an assist, "That's right, we couldn't learn it for more than 10 years before us, and it's useless to teach it now. I think it's fine as it is now." The third wife and others. The 2 little ladies of the Bai family gave Zhou Man a vague look with envy in their eyes. Mrs. Lu picked up the chopsticks and folded a chopstick of vegetables, and smiled, "Have breakfast, everyone is tired early in the morning. Are you hungry now?" There were a lot of people at the moment, and everyone obeyed the rule of not saying goodbye, so everyone ate breakfast in silence. Man Bao and Bai Shan both had good appetites. They ate 2 buns first, then ate the meat porridge mixed with some pickles in small bites. After eating the meat porridge, they picked up the small steamed buns to eat. The small steamed buns made in the kitchen are different from the ones made in the restaurants outside. The steamed buns in the restaurants outside are all very affordable. They are so solid that they can be smashed into a person's head when they are frozen. The steamed buns made at home are white, fluffy and fluffy. One is the size of half a palm, and it comes down with a gentle tug. It is just one bite, soft and sweet, especially delicious. Man Bao and Bai Shan both liked it, even if the buns didn't have fillings. The third wife and others on the side watched her eat, stunned and surprised. Especially the two little girls who were not a few years younger than Man Bao, who looked up and down at Zhou Man and was very envious, and felt that she must have the secret to keeping her figure. After eating so much, they are still not fat. On the contrary, their flesh and bones are well proportioned, round, and lovely, and the two of them immediately envied them. After breakfast, Madame Lu asked Bai Shan and Zhou Man to take 4 of their peers to play in the garden, while she dealt with Madame San and others. The two sides were not familiar with each other, so they could not play for a long time, and the other party left before noon. As soon as they left, Man Bao threw himself on the soft couch and sighed, "It's comfortable." Bai Shan couldn't help but be happy, he also sat on the couch and huddled with her. There was no one else in the room. He simply kicked off his shoes and huddled with her to whisper, "Tomorrow we will send someone to the county government office to get married." Man Bao nodded. Seeing her nod, Bai Shan bit her ears, "So you're really satisfied with this marriage, right?" Man Bao gave him an elbow and said with a red face, "If you say these shameful words to me again, I will deduct the marriage certificate tomorrow and not let you marry." Bai Shan immediately shut up. "See you at 9.